welcome back to Nature Tech Family. In this episode, we are continuing our series on epic tracking. We'll be sharing with you how to tell if the animal you're tracking is a male or a female. And if it is a male, and it's of a species of animal that grows antlers, are those antlers especially large? If it's a female, then is it pregnant? If you have not already watched episode 3 of our epic tracking series, we would suggest that you would start there. There's a lot of information that we share in that episode that's going to tie in with what we're doing here today. So please, sit back, relax, and enjoy. First, let's start by dispelling a myth about deer tracks. The myth goes that if you can see the dew claws in the track, that it was left by a buck. The problem with this myth is that all deer have dew claws, including does, as you can see in this picture here, and these here. But rest assured, there is a logical way to tell the difference between male and female. To share with you these techniques, we're once again going to use the larger front foot in black and the smaller rear foot in blue. Let's say you come across a set of tracks in the field. First thing you would want to do is again draw the spine. This can be done in the field with a piece of string and popsicle sticks strung right between the tracks. Once we have the spine, just like in episode 3, we can tell the left side of the body from the right side of the body. Now let's take a closer look at the individual track patterns. Once again, this animal will be on a direct register, and therefore the front foot will be underneath of the smaller rear foot. If we look closely, we can see that the front foot consistently falls to the outside of the pattern. In other words, whether it be on the left or the right side of the body, it is always the furthest away from the spine. What this track pattern is showing us is a pattern of a male. The reason it's a male is because it has wider shoulders. In other words, if the front feet are consistently wider, it's a male. This is true in canines, felines, and hoofed animals. Now let's say we're tracking a hoofed animal and it's November. We determined it's a male. Now, as promised, here are a few of the ways that you can tell if the hoofed animal you're following has large antlers. The first thing you will notice in an animal that is carrying large antlers is that the front feet will be spread further away from the spine than what is normal for that animal. You will also notice that there will be a separation between the hooves, as the hooves spread out to carry the extra weight. The front feet will spread out like this to compensate for the extra weight that's caused by the swollen neck and the large antlers. And because an animal that has large antlers has to spread its front feet out wider to compensate, this causes the trail width to become even wider than what is normal. And just how big is that buck? To determine this, you'll have to review the techniques we used in episode 3 and find out which bucks have the longest stride. The bucks with the largest bodies will always have the largest strides for that area. The last technique for determining if an animal has large antlers is the depth of the front track. If an animal has large antlers and a swollen neck, it'll drive those front hooves into the earth. This, combined with a wider than average trail width and a longest stride for that given area, means you're tracking an animal that has very large antlers. At this point, let's move on to determining if the animal you're tracking is a female, and if it is a female, is it pregnant? And remember that even though we're using deer tracks to represent these techniques work for canine, feline, and other hoofed animals. Once again, we're going to look at the relationship between the tracks from the front feet and the tracks of the rear feet. What you will see in the tracks of a female animal is the exact opposite of what we saw in a male animal. In other words, the rear feet will consistently be to the outside of the track pattern. In other words, the furthest away from the spine. These wider hips, of course, cannot be seen until they're beyond the stage of adolescence, and show up more if they are pregnant or have given birth at least once in their life. What this is showing is that female animals that are diagonal walkers tend to have wider hips than shoulders. Let's use this deer as an example to determine if a diagonal walking animal is pregnant. Let's say we've been tracking this doe for a while and named her Jody. Jody's tracks have typically looked like this. But come early spring, her back feet started to fall further and further from the spine. And now there's a gap between her rear hooves as a hoof spreads out because of extra weight. This extra weight will cause the rear foot to show up deeper than average. It may even show up as large as or larger than a front foot. If these characteristics show up consistently in a diagonal walking animal, we can say with certainty that they are pregnant. And one thing we have learned is that in the later stages of pregnancy, just before an animal gives birth, the rear feet will spread out at a greater angle than normal. When we're seeing all these signs in Jody's tracks, we know with certainty that one of these will soon be in the area. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Epic Tracking, and if you did, then please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And always remember to get up, get out, and go have an adventure.